All right, welcome to the A/B testing swipe file session of the summit. This is day 2 of the A/B testing summit, and we're glad to have you back. As we begin today, I'm going to take you through our library, and to do that, I need to get you to start thinking in a very specific way. So let's engage your mind by sharing 2 treatments. You can see a version. We'll call the one on the left A, and we'll call the one on the right B. Now, take a look at them and decide which one of these do you think will produce the highest performance. In this case, completed order. So take a look. You've only got a moment. We want to keep this moving at a brisk pace so that we can take you through a lot of specific content that'll help you with your optimization efforts. But if you're looking, you'll see A and B. And it's very important that you pick one and that you also articulate a reason. Now, I taught a year ago at the A/B Summit, and I talked about how to create a hypothesis. And you can find out that by going back to the old, to last year's version of this, or to some of the work on our site. But that reason that you formulate is the beginning of your hypothesis. And if it's just a reason, if it's just a couple of ideas, if it's some random observations, it lacks the centerpiece, which is coherence. And it is through coherence that we're able to create a hypothesis that yields the highest possible insight into the customer's mindset. So we're going to look at these again. That's A and B. And you're going to do 2 things. And I'm going to use the whiteboard with me so that I can sort of teach in a dynamic way as we're moving along. First, you've got to make a choice. And then you've got to produce a reason. And with that choice and that reason, we are forming the foundation of a hypothesis. And with that hypothesis, we can begin to map the mind of the prospective customer. But for now, just articulate a reason to yourself and remember your choice, because we're going to come back to this as we teach later in the session. Now, let's look at another. This is 2 versions, huge global brand. You can see A and B, and you'll notice there is some blurring. This is us protecting the brand. The experiments are old enough that it's okay, but we try to be respectful. So don't let that throw you. Just notice particularly the headline. Now, all of it is important, but which one do you think will produce the highest performance? Now, you should have your choice and your reason, all right? And think about that, and let's move to a third one. This was very interesting to me. The CEO of the group who put this together ran for president of the United States. That's all I can tell you, but I can also say this was a roll-up from private equity, and it's a critical experiment because it impacted the entire way they thought about attracting new patients. So if you will look at these, I'd like you to pick the approaches, A or B, all right? Now, as you're thinking about those, you should formulate your reason and then remember your choice. And let's get into more teaching. Let's begin with the first one. You'll notice it's test protocol 1621, which is an important number inside of MECLABS. We've ran 20,000 plus treatment tests. And 1621 is how academics can find the particular experiment and study it. And I'm drawing from it in order to help you learn something today. We want to increase vacation bookings. And we're back to that page that you looked at earlier. You'll see there's the control. Now, if that is the control, you might ask yourself a different question. If I had the job of improving the performance of this page, what are the top 3 changes I would make? As you're thinking about that, please notice the box is covered in blue. That's actually the way the page is. Until you complete the left side, you can't really work on the right side. And so the page works like this from left to right. Have you identified a reason? Think about it. And I'll show you a little bit of the context. So the original cart was broken into these 2 steps. There's the control, and you can see the 2 sides of the page. The horizontal flow, as well as the blue shading, made it difficult for visitors to get a sense of how the cart was operating, where they were, what was required of them. It did not flow in the way the mind flows, and we can talk more about that later, but let's keep going. And then let's look at the treatment. Now here's the treatment. Same information arranged on the page in a vertical format. The simple step indicator is engaged, and the 2 steps of the treatment are laid out in a vertical flow that makes it easier, or at least we believed it would make it easier, for the mind to process the flow in the card. So now let's look at them side by side. You have the control and you have the treatment. Now listen, I have tested so many cards, accordion versions, and really smart designs that I thought would produce a higher or better result. But in this case, the second version, and you can see there's some other changes. You're right and smart to point out that the 100% guarantee, it was on the other version, but the way we emphasized it visually alleviated some anxiety. This is called the variable cluster. If you wonder why we're doing different variables, you can look at our work in scientific testing, and we've patented an approach that uses clusters of variables, not multiple variables in a multivariate size or a multivariate design of an experiment, because in many cases you have many disparate pieces being tested at the same time, and you're just looking for a winning combination. But a winning combination does not produce wisdom. And wisdom is the capital that the marketer must trade in, customer wisdom. And that comes when you field a coherent picture, a single coherent picture, and that was done in this case. We teach you how we do that later, but the result was 36% increase. Now, the reason we need to pause for a moment is because as we start to look at the numbers, our mind's going to go through a blur. The great psychologist turned economist, Daniel and Kahneman and his partner Amos Tversky studied the way the mind works. And frankly, that 36% can be lost on us. It starts to become a fuzzy, vague notion in our mind. But this is 36% more money from the same marketing spend. And it's so transformative, it's like flipping a switch and suddenly that money comes flowing in. And all you did was change the psychology of the page. You didn't change the price. You didn't change the product. You didn't even change the message. You emphasized it differently, you ordered it differently, and you impacted the mind in a different way. Now that's going to be very important as we go forward, because I want to suggest to you that we're going to tell you today that you should not optimize your web pages, and you shouldn't. I recently did a YouTube live session called The End of Web Design. We need to even think about the notion of the web design. We also need to rethink what the funnel is. We're tracking down the path that others have laid for us, and we can't understand why we're not getting the results we want. The only way we're going to get extraordinary results is to make extraordinary changes, and extraordinary changes arise from extraordinary differences deep inside at the process level of our thinking. So I want to take you on a journey today. I want to ask a simple question, a practical question, but a fascinating question, and then ask you to go with me through a sort of a thought journey that helps you reconceptualize the work that is your daily marketing task. And to do that, I'm going to make this question very clear, put it right in front of you, and ask you to think about it. Is it possible to take the next 30 to 40 minutes and truly impact your conversion results? I'm not asking, can I get a lift? I'm asking, can I change my entire approach? Could I think differently? Could we work together to think differently and produce a whole series of results that transcend the limitations we've experienced thus far? Now, if you're thinking about that with me, then I want to partner with you. And that's the whole point. I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm tired of standing in front of a camera or a microphone or a class if the only outcome is to dispense information. What I'm interested in doing is connecting deeply with you and engaging your mind in a way that produces a different outcome. Something in Greek, one of my favorite languages, something in Greek we call metanoia. And it's a transformation from something into something. It turns you into something new. If you want a new set of results, it begins not with the external, but with the internal. It begins with what's happening inside of you. And so you can take these next few minutes and you can listen to me and you can be slightly entertained and pick up some tips. But oh, that's so insufficient, so boring, so unsatisfactory, so unrewarding. I'd rather swing big and miss than take those little safe bets. Let's try to learn something today that's powerful and rich and transformative. And to do that, I want to show you where all the research comes from. Now, I have to assume that some of you are familiar with MECLABS and with my work. And if you are, I'm going to apologize to you right now because I don't want to bore you with our journey. But everything I'm teaching today, and this is important, is coming from the swipe file you see at the bottom of that picture. We teach this in our Quick Win Intensives. Now, this is not a lead gen mechanism because we already have your name and information. This is purely just a way to help you. We want you to download that swipe file. There's 70 experiments in it. Again, the only motive for that is so that you can take what I'm teaching today and see it in much more, I would say, generous portions of content. We'll only look at a small portion of those experiments because our time constrains us, but you can look at all of them and you can see all sorts of befores and afters and you can learn from them. So download it. And again, my goal is just to help you there. Now, as you do that, I'm afraid that if you are new to this and you haven't heard of MECLABS or myself, you need some context. Otherwise, what I'm saying has no authority. And I want to ground what I'm going to suggest to you next because it's radical. And if it's going to be communicated with any effect, you need to know where it's coming from. And this little timeline sort of helps me think about our journey because 30 years ago, we began the first research program based on the internet, the first research program in history that used the internet as a behavioral research psychology lab. And we began testing how people think and make decisions. And for 30 years, we've been asking a single question: why do people say yes? I know Tim Ash spoke yesterday, and there are now people all over in the field who are speaking and teaching and adding to it, and we're grateful for everyone's contribution. We're not trying to build a great service organization. We perform some research services, but we are a teaching institution. And it's been rewarding to watch the entire world change. When we first started talking about optimization, I don't think anyone had. When we turned out our first certification courses, no one had any other place to go. And now there's options everywhere, and the world is growing and learning. But there's so much more we can still learn. The human mind is a mystery. And to me, marketing by itself and conversion marketing would be so unfulfilling, even boring, were it not for the fact that in my mind, I don't succumb to the connotation of marketing, but to its pure denotation, to the essence of what it is, to the true pursuit of mind that engages marketing. Marketing is about the psychology which influences conclusions. So for 30 years, we've been trying to understand that. In fact, we've always boiled it down to a single question. Why? Why do people say yes? Now that yes is important, but yes to one option over another. That is yes to, let's say, your product over your competitor's product. And to that end, we've been conducting research, and the insight that sort of drove this 30 years ago, and back then, by the way, the internet was still in Unix. We didn't even have HTML until 1993. And I remember how naive and stupid I was. And that hasn't changed very much. It's just that back then I thought, wow, I was 20 years old. I thought, wow, we can use the internet to get inside the mind and watch thousands of decisions. Because I was convinced it was going to become a phenomenon, that transactions would occur, that banking would occur, that media would occur in this new world. But I couldn't find anybody to support me. And we ended up founding the research program by scraping together our own dollars. I'm grateful for that. I'm glad we didn't take any private equity. I'm glad we didn't take those investments because we got to blaze our own course. Here we are today. We've been doing this 30 years. When I started, I had hair. I've got engineers laughing at me in here. I had hair and big ideas. The pursuit of this answer is, it will surprise you and it will humiliate you, and eventually you'll probably lose your hair and other things. But you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it because what you're really unlocking is the essence of existence. I'm a philosopher by training, and I trained in philosophy with the Jesuits in philosophy and theology, and it became clear to me in the earliest years that people are the product of their choices and the choices made about them. So I want to talk more about that and teach you 3 principles today drawn from 30 years of research. And if you have never met MECLABS before, these may be very new to you. If you're one of our students, I don't think I have anything new to say today. I made the tough choice of serving the new audience, so you may just want to tune me out. Or if you're part of sort of the family of students and we just like spending time together in the connection, then hang with us and maybe even make suggestions for how I can do better next time. All I want to do is help you learn so we can help other people make the right choice when our product is the best choice, all right? So in those 30 years, running those research programs, we began to develop ways to analyze the psychology of the purchase. These are heuristics, and we're going to draw from them today. And then we began testing in multiple languages. We're still working with Expedia, testing around the world. We tested in multiple countries, from Japan to Brazil to England to, all over the world. And guess what we found? The same variables that impacted the conversion process in the US work in Japan. Even in countries like Israel or in environments where they read the language from right to left as opposed from left to right. Human nature is the same, and we have a principle in our lab, and that is we don't want to work on anything that won't be relevant 1,000 years from now, and that wouldn't have been relevant 1,000 years ago. Social media existed long before the internet. Just look at the catacombs. I don't know if you've ever looked at the hieroglyphics, it's not really hieroglyphics, but the scratchings on the walls of ancient Rome in the catacombs. But it was like a giant marketplace. And everything that you see on Craigslist and everything you used to see on Craigslist before they banned parts of it is right there on the wall of the catacombs, including, and I am translating from the Latin when I say this, for a good time call X. I don't mean to be rude. I just mean to say there's not much new under the sun, and human nature hasn't changed, just the devices through which it works. And so with that in mind, let's go to these more timeless principles, and let's learn together, and let's see what we can glean from 20,000 plus treatment tests. And the first one is something I began saying 20 years ago, but it's truer today than it was then. And there's an epidemic of websites and marketing collateral that violates this basic principle. Clarity trumps persuasion. Now, you have to understand why that's so important. The marketer's art is not magical words. The marketer's art is bringing clarity that produces a certain conclusion that helps drive a decision. In fact, I'll go a step with the whiteboard to explain what you won't see here, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to set it up on the whiteboard as I break this case study out in front of you. So here's what I'm asking you to do if I haven't been clear thus far. Let me be clear. I don't want to persuade you, but I want to be crystal clear today so that you invest 110% of your attention and energy and glean from the time we spend together something that can really bring a new level, not just of results on your job, but of satisfaction in the way you approach it. In my understanding, marketing is an essential aspect of life in a social dynamic, which is the place we find ourselves, where our survival is dependent on interactions with others. We are constantly influencing choice. So this is essential philosophy, but the wonderful thing about the commercial environment is it's sort of like the UFC and the martial arts. It's the ring that you can step in and see, does it work or does it not? Does money work as a scientific measure? Yes, it does. You can get past mammon and into the understanding that I can see how people think by the evidence produced. And the evidence is often measured in simple things like sales. So backing from that bank account into the mind that produced that exchange of value, there's great wisdom. There's insights. We can do philosophy together. And clarity trumps persuasion is an effort in that direction. And let's look at its application. Here's a test protocol. It's 2137 in our library. This is a global brand. We're going to look at two versions of a page. And we could spend a lot of time looking at these two versions. I'm just going to pop them up side by side. There's an A and there's a B. Now, which one of these produces the highest conversion rate? I want you to take a moment and vote. Now, when I say vote, this is not interactive because it's pre-recorded, but you've got to, in your own mind, make a choice. And I want to force you to choose. Why? Because I'm trying to stimulate a process in the way your neurons are firing right now that will help you learn in a new and different way. So you must choose and you must select your reason. Now, once you've done that, I want you to notice that when you made that choice, it was based on a decision, and that decision was based on a set of observations. Now, I'm going to show you what happened here. In fact, in order to make this learning more intense for you, let's skip the page because there's a lot of change at the bottom of the page, but they're all of the changes are done with a single coherent hypothesis that's focused on clarity. For instance, on the right-hand side, there is a column in the right-hand treatment, but there's none in the left. Why? We'll talk about it. But focus now just on the top of the page. And let's just start with the words, okay? And what I want you to understand is when you pick A or B, you are behaving. That's important, okay? But your behavior, your choice, your choosing is the result of a conclusion. So I'm going to put the conclusion here. Now, the conclusion powers, I'm going to call that choice, a technical term we're all familiar with, a decision. So that conclusion powered a decision. But something occurred before the conclusion. You're doing it right now. You're doing it as you listen to me. You're doing it about me. You're doing it about this time we're spending together. And you're doing it about the top of this page. Indeed, what you'll see is that there is a set of, and I'm just going to abbreviate with a giant letter to emphasize it, and I'm going to underline the letter. But the word is observation. You are observing the page. Now, I can't control that, right? You control the observing. But listen, marketer, I can control what I give you to observe. And you're looking at two sets of pixels, two sets of zeros and ones, two sets of illusions, two sets of thought cues. And I'm taking those cues and placing them in front of you in order to stimulate a conclusion that will evidence itself with a decision. And that's what you do every day if you're in conversion optimization. And by the way, if you're a marketer, you should be all about conversion. There is no marketing of any value that isn't conversion marketing. I know we like to call it a separate discipline, but conversion is as essential to marketing as breathing is to life. In all marketing, you are influencing a conclusion, and that conclusion influences a decision. You say, well, what about institutional brand marketing? Well, let's take a good case of that. What happened when BP spilled oil and we saw, a travesty in the Gulf? Did you see all the advertising that came after that? You say, they weren't selling anything. Oh, yes, they were. They weren't working on conversion. Oh, yes, they were. They were converting you from an enemy to a supporter, if they could. At least from an unbeliever to a believer. At least from an angry person to an accepting person. They were trying to change your state of mind. That is a form of metanoia. In the Greek, it looks like this. I'm just writing the Greek word. That's a tau. And this V-looking thing is a nu. And this word is what they were trying to attempt to achieve inside that universe that exists between your ears. Now, go back to the page, because believe it or not, this Gulf spill and the 2 pages all connect. This conversation and your engagement with me connects. Even as I'm speaking, you're observing, you're drawing conclusions, and from there you make a decision. One decision you could make right now, I hope you don't, please don't, you could turn me off. We do this all the time. This is the closest you'll ever get to being a god. Put one of these in your hand, and you can terminate somebody's existence with a single click. For all practical purposes, you could click and turn me off, and you'll never see me again. That's frightening, but true. It was true when we only had television. It's more true in the internet. You replace this with a mouse, same thing. Why is that so important? Because somebody's got 2 pages. Let's put those right in front of you again. 2 pages. Now, let's suppose you're the author of those 2 versions. You have 7 seconds, 4 inches to influence me. You must use the first 2 lines to capture my attention, convert it to interest. You must take me through 2 to 6 micro yeses, or you will lose me and possibly forever. And there's 2 attempts to do that, and each attempt represents a hypothesis. And with that in mind, I want you to look. By the way, is that a landing page or an email? Ask yourself the question. When you can't tell the difference, there's a problem. It's an email. Should be a landing page. The goal of an email is to get a click, not to sell anything, but the click. Get them to the landing page and sell them there. But in this case, we're testing 2 emails because that's what we were given to test. Version A, version B, you've made your choice. Let's look at the results. There is a difference of 137% in purchases. Now, we're not talking about initial step through, in purchases. By saying it in the right way. What's going on here? Well, let's take the one on the right. That's the one that lost, okay? And the one on the left, version A, won. So version B was the control. We just mixed them up so that we could ask you to think about it, and we'll mix them in different directions throughout this time. But version B has home delivery, plus web, plus mobile, plus tablet. Stop right there. I'm going to ask you a very important scientific question. What the hell does that mean? Home delivery plus web plus mobile plus tablet. Is this a pizza service that delivers a computer, a phone, and a tablet of paper to you? Is it an offer? One exceptional offer. What is the offer? Now, I've absorbed a horrifically colored blue on white, all cap equation that says 0 to me, that offers no meaning, provides 0 clarity. Look on the left. Get 50% off. There's the brand of the paper. Delivery for 12 weeks. Unlimited online access free. And a powerful use of the subheader. Is version A better than version B? You know what? You can argue that all you want in the social dynamic that exists inside your company, but that will generally produce more heat than light. Somebody said a web page. I said it, actually. I'm so old. I'm quoting myself. Somebody said a web page put together by a committee is like somebody's version of a camel. Because somebody else said, and I didn't say this, a camel is just a horse put together by a committee. One page over here sort of operates like a camel. It doesn't have the coherence. And it's not that it's more persuasive or not. It's that it's not clear, and the other one is. Now, we know they're emails. By the way, the reason I know that is because Paul Cheney keeps holding up a piece of paper saying, emails, emails. I know it's emails, but the point is the same. It's still a page, right? There's no such thing as a mail or a web page. It's all illusions created in the mind to sort of stimulate an action that they want you to take. You know, I'm going to do a whole course on how to examine my life through the lens of marketing. Who has influenced me to make the wrong choice? Because it's happening every day. But that's for a different point. It's only that this is so germane to everything we do in life. And we're going to run out of time if we don't keep going. I just needed to set this up for you to understand everything we're learning. Clarity trumps persuasion. The left side is clear, and the result is not a little bit better, but it's more than double. And that's a lesson you should not walk away from lightly, because you may think to yourself, I'm just not the excellent copywriter that I've heard about. You know, there's these guys that are like magicians. They can do things with words and make magic happen. Listen to me, the internet and the world doesn't need more magicians. It needs more honest marketers who tell the truth in a way that we can understand. In fact, when that happens, when you have a true value proposition, we're going to talk about that coming up, you don't need to persuade, you need to communicate clearly. So, I'm only going to show you one more example of this, just to drive it home. There's a reason why we're doing 2 of these. There's a reason why I don't rush on. You're learning it, but now I'm going to try to imprint it deeper into your mind. And if you'll notice test protocol 1633, and there is the control. And let's just read the headline. It's never been easier to be on Broadway. What do they sell? Stop. Don't look at anything else on the page. Close your eyes, even. What do they sell? You just read that. Can you get any idea of that? No, you can't. And in fact, you can read that first half of the page. I don't know whether they're selling a building or they're selling, what are they selling? You say, well, what about the banner? A lot of people don't even see the banner. The picture's so large, it draws the eyes. And then you move right and you miss the whole point. And even if they know what you're selling, is there any reason there why we should buy it? No. And if you try to process what you see below, you're assaulted by 6 green buttons. And it's too many buttons saying the same thing, and they're stacked in a horizontal way. And it's confusing and difficult. What do you do with this? Well, you can see the things I've talked about called out as I move through the slide. But what's more interesting is the solution. What would you do to solve this? Well, if it was a simple problem, we might just fix it with a headline, but it's actually a complex offering, and it's hard to present the differences between the choices. And so we need a way that will help people see and understand. You know, the Greek word for wisdom is synesis. There's sort of 2 words, Sophia and synesis, and Sophia has to do with understanding first principles. Oddly enough, that's what Elon Musk describes as the way he processes his challenges. But the other word is synesis, which I love because it means right seeing. And indeed, if you think about it in that way, what we're saying is that we need to see clearly. And you may be looking at this page and for the first time starting to see it, not better, but right seeing for you and I as a marketer occurs when we see through the eyes of the prospect. And in that way, we overcome our blind spot. And so my point for you is, now when you look at this page, and this page, by the way, the CEO of this company, the former CEO, is I'm proud to have as a friend. And we worked together to solve these issues. But he was a brilliant guy. And this company is 60 years old, invented their industry, they're global. And he had smart people working for him. So the problem wasn't foolishness or people that didn't care or people that weren't smart. The problem was a blind spot, a lack of synesis in the Greek, of the right seeing, of the ability to see the page through the eyes of the customer so that we could recreate the page, this illusion, so that it produced greater clarity and thus prospective customers make better decisions. Because it was a good decision to choose them. But it was hard to tell. And even then, if you choose them, which offering do you choose? So look at the new page. Everything about this page is designed to bring clarity. The headline, the images, and they actually start to demonstrate the value proposition. The key points of value are outlined with main bullets that are illustrated with icons and the comparison of the 3 offerings. You know, if you walked away from this and said, I learned something today, comparison charts are the way to go, then you completely missed it. Probably not your fault, probably mine. Probably I failed you as a teacher. And I'm not trying to sound, humble. It's just true. It's a huge and almost overwhelming task to communicate with value to somebody who's paying you one of their most precious resources, attention. And so let me protect you from that today and say the lesson isn't comparison charts work better. The lesson is clarity trumps persuasion. And for this offering, a comparison chart was the best way to communicate the options. And so we used a feature matrix in the form of a comparison chart, and we even improved the call to action, and we weighted one. Did you hear this? Weighted one so that it was easier to choose over the others, so that you weren't stuck trying to make meaning. It is the job of the marketer to make meaning for you, okay? And thus, you observed, and with the observation, you drew conclusions, and it became easier for you to make a decision. And thus, we accomplished metanoia, which indeed produced a result. What was the result? More than double. Did you see that? It's in subscriptions too. That's real money. More than double the result. Now, that swipe file that we talked about at the beginning, it's completely free. And again, it's not a lead gen mechanism, although there's nothing wrong with that. But it has over 70 of these, and I can talk to you about 2. And maybe a few more in these next few points, and we're done. This brings me to the second point, and I'm running through my time fast because I'm so intent on making certain that I drill enough that you get the point. I'm going to take you to the next one. If you've been with me in my classes for the last 25 years, you heard this in the first class. But I can't say it enough. I can't say it too much. I'm not going to stop saying it. So I'm going to be obnoxious because it's so easy to lose touch with this. People don't buy from websites. People buy from people. They personify the website. They hold a conversation in their mind. They're not even aware of it sometimes. Your job is to influence that conversation one micro yes at a time. I've often taught this. Many of you have seen it. I'm gonna change this whiteboard a little bit for a second and just help you see what's really going on here. When people purchase from you, they don't make a single big yes decision. They don't decide all at once they're going to do something. Indeed, what they do is they move up in a series of tiny micro yeses. I have a funnel in front of you. It's not a pyramid, it's a funnel. It's not a very good one, but it's meant to illustrate something you've probably all heard me say before. People aren't falling into your funnel, they're falling out. Gravity is not your friend, gravity is your enemy. People don't fall in because gravity sucks them in. Everything you do is against the force of gravity, and what gravity is doing, let's let that represent gravity. Gravity is dragging people out of your funnel. So if you understand your task as a marketer, you've got to invert that funnel and realize you've got to move people up against the force of gravity, because gravity, let it represent organic distractions. Say their boss steps in when they're looking on at your product during the workday, competing offers, technology errors, all the things that conspire to stop us. Most of us are satisfied when 100 people go in our funnel if 2 come out the other side, but that is abysmal. And part of the reason we have such a hard time is we don't even understand our task. We got mixed up metaphors. We use words like driving traffic. You can't drive traffic. You can only seduce it. You must draw it, attract it against gravity. And the one force that you can use to pull people up against this gravity, which is pulling them out, is the value proposition. And that's my third point. I'm going to talk to you about that in just a few minutes. I'm just going to abbreviate it right here with these words. But the value proposition pulls me up one micro yes at a time, just like stepping up a set of stairs. I've got to move up with each micro yes. A headline has 2, for instance. A typical form has at least a dozen. A landing page has more than 20. Now, why is that so important? Because stop copying Apple. They didn't get their success because they were brilliant web pages, and we've all copied them. We don't even know we copied them because we're copying the people who copied them, who copied them, who copied them, who copied them. And on the internet, there is no best practice. There's just pooled ignorance. If we're going to copy that in Apple, then why don't we make people wait outside in the rain for 3 days before we let them have our product? Because that worked for Apple, but it won't work for you. If you want to copy Apple, copy the essence of the value proposition in the days when Steve engineered magnificence. And my point for you is just this. People don't leap up that funnel. They move up one yes at a time. And Apple often just stacks ideas, one on top of the other. And they do it in the form of like modules down the page. And we all do the same thing now. We don't know which one's going to get them, so we just throw a stack at them and hope it does. That is not a conversation, that is a barrage. And it doesn't produce the highest conversion rate. It doesn't produce a linear flow of thinking that leads to an inevitable conclusion, and it's going to hurt you. You can see it right here. This is the control. This is another one of those pages you looked at the beginning, and you can see in this page where they've done a good job of creating a credible and an attractive page. But all it is information stacked upon information with no sequential flow. And to get the flow right, because it's a very big decision, this is about putting your loved ones into some sort of rehab center. So there you have it. There's the control. And the treatment is long. And you say, long? Why would I ever want to use a long page? When you need a long page in order to communicate enough and clearly, you need a long page. Indeed, we put the long page in a flow, in a conversation that moved one micro yes at a time up the funnel in the mind. And by the way, this funnel, it's not the page, it's the cognitive fabric of the mind wrapped around the progression from the channel all the way through to the ultimate yes that makes them a customer. And indeed, the long page was tested against the short page, and the outcome was a 220% increase in leads. That's mind-boggling. I can tell you we ran a series of other tests, drove more than 600% improvements by getting inside the psychology of the purchase process. I have more questions than I have answers. If right now I'm coming across like I know it, all the answers to these challenges that we all face together, I am so sorry, because you can't work in our scientific environment without getting embarrassed. Marketers get made fools of, but that's the price of wisdom. Did you know that? You can either be a fool or let yourself be made a fool. But in the former, you don't have much to win for that negative experience. In the latter, it's that willingness to embarrass yourself, learn, to be wrong, to be humiliated, that produces that priceless gift of wisdom. And the marketer of the organization should be the customer philosopher. You should have more wisdom about the customer than anyone else. And once CEOs realize that, your value can be dramatically reappraised. But stay with me. This is an example, and I move on to one final example. This is a retail e-commerce example. And in the swipe file, we have it organized into 3 groups: lead gen, e-commerce, and subscription. So here's an e-commerce example. This is an old direct response group that helped bring the kettlebell to the fitness craze. And they did this 20-some years ago. With a Russian, it's famous, they're famous, and you'd seen them in magazines like Black Belt magazine and all the martial arts magazines, and then in fitness magazines, and then finally they just permeated everything. And the CEO and his family were brilliant, and they delivered a lot of value to the market. But here's the page that we were working on together, and you can see the control. It looks like you would expect. It looks like most e-commerce websites, like a catalog page. But you know, catalog doesn't talk. Person does. People don't buy from devices, they buy from people. Here's a new page. It talks, engages in conversation, helps you understand. And for that very reason, it produces a different outcome. There's the control, there's the treatment. I remember how meaningful this was to them. They're a big organization, but they're a family organization, and they had a hard time working to drive revenue and increases. I mean, they'd done so well, it was hard to beat the success they'd already won. But look, 61% increase in conversion. And if you look at those 2 pages and think the difference is in the image or one particular element, and you miss the coherent point that we are talking like a person to a person, and thus the page has a conversation and engages in those micro yeses in order to drive this ultimate yes that results in a customer. I am at my 3rd point. If you're still with me, not only are you a glutton for punishment, but you're almost done. And so I want to take you to probably the most important thing I have to say in the few minutes that we've had together, from the beginning to the end, from the very first time I opened my mouth on this lecture to right now. This is the most important thing. Without an authentic value proposition, you're probably just surviving on pockets of ignorance. And by the way, you're not going to survive much longer. Because when people find out you're not the best choice, they're not going to choose you. And the internet, above all, was an equalizer. It changed the political fortunes of heads of state all over the world. And suppression, and I don't mind saying it, defiantly against what I've seen in China and other places, suppression was the only response that some countries could make, because when we started equalizing information, entire currents of the population said, no more. I will not tolerate this anymore. The internet also changed the geographic advantage that we have in commerce. When you were in a small town in this country, you were limited in your choices, but now you could go online and find it and have it delivered to your doorstep. And if Jeff Bezos has his plan, I don't know if I ever pronounced his name right. For 20 years, I've been pronouncing it wrong. But if he ever gets his plan fully executed, the drones will be dropping it off on the same day you order it. What's going on here? You better figure out a value proposition. You better know what it is. You better know how to articulate it, and stop right now. Don't write, don't look, don't do anything else except answer my question. I'm going to give you a few seconds. 30 is too many. You should be able to answer it in less than that. Tell me right now the value proposition of your company or your primary product. The clock is ticking. If you're struggling, don't feel too bad, because I'll bet you eventually every person on this line will. And those that aren't are probably giving me the wrong answer. Why? Well, the man who invented the word lives in Atlanta. His name is Michael Lanning. He deserves credit. He invented it. Somebody else stole it and used it, wrote a book before he did. Then he wrote a book about it, and his book's better, by the way. But there was no research. We brought Michael here. We ran 10,000 experiments and built a framework. And frankly, you can get an MBA and still not know what a value proposition really is or how to utilize one to get the greatest results. But it is the key to your business. It is the only justification for your survival. It is the counterforce to evolution in the marketplace, which is based on survival of the fittest and which through natural selection will destroy you, your future, and all of your value, your net worth if you're not careful. What are you going to do about it, though, is the question. Brings me to this experiment, test protocol 1560. This is an Aetna company. We just worked with him. The CEO is a brilliant guy. He was in analytics before he became the CEO, and this was an Aetna startup. Launched the company. This case study is on our Marketing Sherpa. You may or may not know we own the Marketing Sherpa brand as well as Marketing Experiments, and it's on that website, his story. And all I want to do is share with you a page. And by the way, if you're in one of these regulated industries like banking, we worked with most of the major banks, really, banks. And if you are in insurance, take hope. I know they're regulated, but here's an example. In fact, every landing page had to get approved in 50 states and had to go through all of those complications. But there's the control. And it's not bad. We're here to help. But what's wrong with that? If you've learned anything, let's go back to the first point. Clarity trumps what? I hope you're saying persuasion in your mind. Clarity trumps persuasion. What's clear? We're here to help. Clear. What does that mean? All right, let's just take that headline. How many companies could we put that on? Let's start. Let's think. Well, we could put that on McDonald's. We could put that on Berkshire Hathaway. We could put that on your local real estate agent's office. We could put that on the janitorial service that cleans your building. So how meaningful is that headline? Well, on a scale of, let's say 1 to 10, it's less than 0. It's useless. It's a waste of words. It's a waste of bits. It's costing you. It's costing people who need this healthcare solution, which is an excellent solution. I became friends, and I have elderly parents, and I learned how amazing, literally, I was blown away. But how many people even realize that? Because it's so hard to cut through the confusion and really the BS that is in the marketplace everywhere. So we had a mission to help the right person find the right solution, and honestly, without trying to pander, it's a noble mission. And I can tell you that this CEO and his team really were motivated that way. People worked there because they believed and they were helping people. And I'm not trying to, make them look good. I just was impressed. So because I'm a marketer who is at first a philosopher, who is at first just trying to figure out why I'm here and what to do with my life, I get excited when I see something meaningful coming out of our work, and we wanted to help these guys. And this isn't about us. It's about the courage they took to make the changes I'm going to show you right there. Now we had to go through all the approvals and just tons of red tape. And all I want you to see is that on this page, we start to launch an answer to the value proposition. Now, I have a heuristic that explains the value proposition and tons of research, thousands of tests. I can't teach it right now. I'm just going to ask you a question. A single, all-important, vital question. And you need to just pause. And if you really want to get value from our time together, you need to let this one hit you in the face like a point from a sermon. If I'm the ideal customer, now, if I'm not, you shouldn't even be wasting my time. And you should know who your ideal customer is, because you probably can't put into the market a solution that serves everybody. If I'm the ideal customer, take your trade-offs. Be brave. Stop serving the people you can't serve well. Only serve the ones you can serve best. But if I am the ideal customer, and by the way, you notice that the move went from first person or third person to first person. You got to get out of your shoes and into the shoes of your customer, or you can't even think straight. If I am the ideal customer, why? Notice the word why. Why is so important, because it tells you something is coming. In fact, if whatever you said a while ago in your mind was your value proposition, whatever phrase you put together, if I can't put the word because in front of it, it's not right. Because it's a reason. In fact, it's an ultimate reason. In fact, it's the capstone of an argument. If I am the ideal customer, why should I purchase from you? So now you're asking me for an argument, not the bad kind like you got in trouble for as a kid, but the good kind like Einstein used to help us figure out how the world works and relativity and time. A good kind. This argument is a piece of philosophy. It's a piece of physics. It influences choice. It allows me to understand why I should choose you. And here comes the last point and the most important one, rather than. Rather than means there's other choices out there. So you are not that choice. If you're the only choice, they don't have to choose unless it's to not do anything. But in a world completely dominated by choice, never in society have there existed a people with more choice than we have right now. That's why what we study together as marketers is foundational to existence. Never before. Why should I choose you? So let's just take this to Aetna. Well, they've got competition. Why should I choose HealthSpire rather than? If I'm the ideal customer, if I'm a 24-year-old millennial, this is not a product for me. So don't even try to serve them. And if I am the right age, it still may not be best for me. But if I'm in the right income bracket or whatever defines my product, my segment, why should I choose Aetna and particularly HealthSpire over others? Well, there's the control and there's the treatment. You know what the difference is? There you go, 638%. I can't do anything more for you in the few minutes I have with you. I can't do anything more important than stress to you the value prop. It's the value prop, it's the value prop, it's the value prop. I wrote a book called The Marketer's Philosopher. We haven't released it till next year, but it has 3 principles, that's all. Essence of marketing is the message. The essence of the message is the value proposition. The essence of the value proposition is the exchange sum, and that I can't teach right now. But the value proposition is central to everything. With that in mind, I'm going to show you one more. Learn how that might look when you actually change the wording. Let's get so tactical. Let's take the last few minutes and let's look at precise application of all 3 points. Okay? So here it is. Here's the control. Anybody that's been in my courses, you've seen this one. I like to use it because it's old enough I can get away. We've blurred the brand, but one of the biggest, the number 1 company in the Fortune 500 company list, in their industry. But let's start with the first principle we learned today. People, let's go all the way back to clarity trumps persuasion. And hold that one in your mind, and I'm going to skip to the second one. Well, no, I'll just hold that one. Clarity trumps persuasion. All right, so let's go full screen on the control. And it says, searching for the most accurate mailing list, your hunt is over. Now, we have the best data guarantee, and you can get 500 free leads. Now, there's some clarity there, but we call that like third order clarity. I know what you're saying. You're saying our data is the best. It's more accurate. I get that. Congratulations. That's better than some sites. They don't even get third order clarity. But until I get second and first order clarity, it's not very good. You know why? Because I don't know why your data is more accurate. I can't see any reason why that claim should be believed, so I don't believe it. And if I don't believe it, it might as well not exist. If what you offer me is amazing, but I don't believe it, then I don't receive it. And for that reason, you lose the chance to change my life. Now let's back up a second. When you think about that, this second order clarity, so I get the idea. You're trying to tell me that you got the best, most accurate data. But the way you said it doesn't produce the clarity I need inside. It's a lousy set of observations to put in front of me because I don't conclude that it's true, and thus I don't decide to become a customer. Now, I could beat it up many other ways, but it's just missing. This page deserves a lot more attention than this. But we teach that in our courses. Let me just take you to the point I'm trying to teach now. Second thing we said is we said, people don't buy from websites, people buy from people. Now, let's just imagine. Let's look at the headline that's there right now. Imagine that someone walked up to you. Let's suppose that you're a single person. I mean this in no offensive way, but we're in a society. There's lots of people. Sometimes some couples decide to get married. I've been married 32 years. I remember meeting my wife. What would happen if I had walked up to her the moment I met her 32 years ago? I was, 20, 21, and said to her, searching for the most eligible bachelor, your hunt is over. I know this woman now after 32 years, and I wouldn't have got to the end of my sentence before she'd have walked away. She has zero tolerance. She's a Southern belle. She has zero tolerance for BS. And here's my point. That isn't the way the marketer who wrote the page, I know the marketer that wrote the page. That isn't how they talk either. That's not how they talk to me. And the marketer responsible for optimizing the page was a young girl named Nicole. She was very pleasant. She was very, very smart. She had a lot going for her, and she would never say that to someone. But we say it in our marketing because it's marketing. We have our own language, and it's obnoxious. We have our own language, and it's disgusting. We have our own language, and it's bullshit. We need to stop that and talk to people like they're people. Now, searching for the most accurate mailing list, your hunt is over, was replaced. And the third point, without a value proposition, you got nothing. That's the third point. That's the paraphrase of the third point. And take a look at the new one. We make 26 million, wait a second. 26 million phone calls a year? I remember when I found those words, I didn't know if I could believe them. They seemed crazy, but they're true, and they're way more credible. And when I go back to the control, down there where it says, plus phone verified data is a little sentence. That's where we found it. Nobody reads it. It's out of the iPath. Page is designed wrong, laid out wrong. I mean, nobody reads it. But we took it over here and put it at the top of the page. We make 26 million phone calls a year to ensure you get the most accurate mailing list available. By the way, they really did make 26 million phone calls a year. And by the way, when you specify the number, credibility goes up. In fact, if you look in the third bullet point under why choose, it says 80,000 calls a day. Do you know how we discovered that? With a calculator. I remember doing the math and then saying, do you really make 80? Do you have that many? I mean, is your call centers, do you have that many people? The answer was yes, and they do. Now, what does that mean? It means suddenly, and by the way, later we surveyed their customers, and they were considered the most accurate. And there's a reason they're the most accurate. Back to first order and second order clarity. It's because they make 26 million phone calls a year. Marketer, listen to me, learn something right now. Suddenly, a value proposition begins to emerge in this company's communication. You're going to get the most accurate list from us. And here's why. And now, instead of being exaggerate and using hyperbole, they're making a very specific claim that they can be accused of. They could be fact-checked on. They could even get in trouble with government agencies for if they're inaccurate. But it's a true statement, and it feels true. And what happens? Well, here's what happens. As I close, I said, people make an observation, O. From the observation, they draw a conclusion, C. From the conclusion, they draw a decision. Now, I didn't teach this one. After the decision, they have an expectation. We talk about what goes on. I teach this in other places. I'm just teaching O, C, and D. And what I want you to understand is now you look at the new page, you have a new set of little pixels that come on and off and change colors, and they represent another kind of language, and that is codified symbols that form letters. And they're backed up by another language, which is a pictographic language in the form of seals and overall like pictures. And the combination of pixels encoded at multiple levels produces some new observations in my mind. And these observations are helping me draw not some conclusions, but the fundamental conclusion. The one that I must make about your value proposition. And by the way, I still don't know if I believe it, but I know that I believe it enough to go to the next step. And that's all I'm trying to win at this point in the micro yeses. From observation to conclusion to decision. From observation, you know what just happened? You heard me stutter because somebody held a sign up in the window of our control room and said 59 minutes. It means I have 1 minute left. It's his fault too, by the way. Yes, fire that man in the back. It's his first day. No joke, it really is his first day. So we're all giving him a hard time. And he's giving me cues on my time. His name is Austin. You'll see more of him around here, but not the Austin McCrawley you're familiar with, the new Austin. O, C, D, observation, conclusion, and decision. Now we've observed something, drawn a conclusion about your value prop, made a decision to purchase some list from you. So what's the result of that? Well, here's what we found. There's the control. There's the treatment. Two different ways to present the observations, and thus two different conclusions, and thus two different decision sets, and thus a 201% increase. Now, I have one more slide. Do not stop till you see the last slide, because this one would make you question our accuracy, but this is all scientifically validated. Take a look at what happened when we took the same value proposition and we applied it all over the business in different business units. Here it is. Boom, boom. 257%, 28%, 603%, 302%, 451%. Those are real gains. Managed in a test protocol and evidence of something different happening in the mind. We do not optimize web pages. Indeed, go back to your job and remember these three things. 1, clarity trumps persuasion. 2, people don't buy from websites, people buy from people. 3, unless you put together an authentic, forceful value proposition, you're just surviving in pockets of ignorance. I hope today helps you. Reach out to me, email me. Any way you can communicate. We want you in our community. Download the swipe file or learn about a Quick Win Intensive. Maybe we can come in and help you and teach you how to do this yourself. Thanks again.